be looking, I think, a lot more amenable for him.
Yeah, I would have to agree. It's a great point that you bring up that aside from Glory, everybody has caught the matchups that we've seen on stream so far in the net cast by their primary deck. So in terms of that, that would mean you would have the most questions about bringing Druid as a class at all if the
Yep.
core deck lines up poorly against the core decks that you expect in the meta. Of course, it's difficult to get a read on the field here, and it's different between the regions, but good enough for Glory that he has a list that he feels is confident to beat the Rogue.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth saying a lot of people who swear by Malygos Druid in the past have seemingly put it by the wayside. Fino, who played a huge amount of Malygos Druid back in the day, says he hates this version of the deck. It's just too clunky. I think Sotul was saying that it's just an absolute joke of a deck, in his opinion, compared to the other versions of Druid, which I do not necessarily agree with. I think there's something that Malygos Druid has to offer, if nothing other than the Dragon package and Breath of Dreams coming in. But I will definitely say, if I had to pick a deck to do as well as possible with on ladder, I would not pick Malygos Druid.
Yeah, definitely not. On ladder, at least, it's very possible that Glory was expecting more Priest in the field, which I feel this deck has a lot of game against, getting that burst damage down out of nowhere. It's just not quite the field for APAC, as there's a bit more Rogue and Mage instead. But this Malygos off the top, activating Breath of Dreams is absolutely huge.
Oh, this game's getting interesting really fast. Rivius used up both of his spell expensiving a fire effects with the Neophyte twice. Definitely a word, by the way. Don't comment on it. But the important thing is he's now found his secret passage, which for me, more than anything else, says you've got a chance at Edwin. Are you going to take it sooner or later?
I'm just happy to know that this is how English people speak English, and it's not actually that bad.
But English is a first language, by the way.
Is a huge thing, and also getting down the Vendetta to 0 cost for that Twilight Runner could come in handy quite a bit later, but a Gnar off the top now means that Rivius can guaranteed play a Paladin secret, and there's a handful that potentially mess with things. Never Surrender comes to mind as being useful, but Repentance not so much.
Yeah, just going off of the secrets here, I'm okay with this because you really want to find some way to stop the stop this beast right in its tracks with the Twilight Runner. It was obviously going up against Waxadread, but I guess how poorly that lines up into it, this is okay.
Glory drew a teacher's pet, which means that he's just getting the one pet off of this guardian animals now, because this is the streamlined beast package with no threshers for the primary.
Yeah, was I just saying that I like not playing Thresher in Druid? Can I take that back, please?
And Ryvius with a sigh of relief. Oh, just one beast. And he also just has information in his hand.
Job's done.
And not only that, he got himself a killer hand off of the Dirty Tricks. We're looking at questing... Whoa! With an Edwin as well! Oh my god! Okay, just go. Just go. Do the stuff, Ryvius. You know how to do this.
We're looking at a big old pile of stats, is what we're looking at there. And Glory has no way of answering it. Second Guardian, but both beasts are in hand. Unable to play both swipes.
Yeah, it's a big old pile of stats for Rivius, and on Glory's side, it's a big old pile of something that smells an awful lot worse. It's got to be said, because this is nothing. 7 mana, do nothing, is equally as good as anything else he can do on this turn, because this is over.
Yep, pick it up, Glory. At least he gets to switch to the deck that he feels more confident using against Rogue, which is that version which is cutting the Anubis-Hoth Defenders and having Wild Growth and Geppetto in there instead. Any minute now. Okay, realistically, the play is probably swipe Crystal Power to remove the questing.
I guess, yeah.
But then you're just dead to the Edwin over a couple turns.
Yeah, I mean, you're alive, right? And then you can hit, I don't know, Teacher's Pet into a Taunt.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, you take your 3/5/4. I guess that's fine as well. Okay. It's something here. It's something.
How does this something smell compared to the big old pile of stats?
Oh no, wait, he's just dead with the swipe. Never mind. That's going to be game over and game on going to Rivius with the plagiarize. It was a good effort there by Glory, but as we can clearly see, that one massive turn 6, way too much for the Druids to overcome. And it's not smelling too good, Gia, for Glory. It's got to be said.
People have been drawing a lot of Edwins today.
They have. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of to be expected. There's a decent amount of draw in the deck, and obviously you are going to be hard mulliganing for it. And a lot of the time it has been questings instead of the Edwin. Like, you are basically playing one good Edwin and 2 bad Edwins in the deck, but it turns out bad Edwin is still pretty good.
Yeah. You're playing 2 bad wins, and you're playing 1 Edward Gallon good win.
Haha.
Yeah.
Yes. Very nice. That's how you get the good RNG in your game. You be nice to the developers. Little trick of how the only way I can reach Legend, it's got to be said. But now with
That's
Glory,
how you do it.
Yeah, exactly. All starting to fit together. I'd imagine switching over to his tertiary deck again, as we can see on the match sheet. He is going to be going over to that list where he loses both the Anubis sats and will be gaining Wild Growth and Geppetto Joybuzz. Again, I have to imagine that the Wild Growth is the main reason for switching over. I think the matchup, generally, you're not expecting to go all the way through to Geppetto Joybuzz. But having said that, the one game he has won against the Rogue did come in no small part at the hand of Geppetto.
It really feels as though the matchup is decided in 2 phases. The first one is, can Rogue get down that big threat, and if the Druid can answer it? And the second one is, can Druid put together the burst? It's hardly that we've ever seen the beasts even come into play that big time, because there's removal in the Rogue deck. There is the Vendettas, there's the Blackjack Stunners, and just the minions that they put together in the meantime can trade fairly well. But the thing that the Rogue can't play against is the amount of burst, the Alexstrasza or Malygos coming down early on, followed by the swipes. So given that obviously the Rogue threat checkpoint happens way before the Druid, I would tend that the Rogue has a lot more favorableness here. But because Glory is switching over to the Geppetto list, he's going all in on making that later checkpoint even more threatening for the Rogue.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable way to go about it, because like you said, if they have the big Edwin, you're gonna be dying anyway. It's not really worth preparing for that situation. You know, I was talking about the Zoo maybe taking in a Brittlebone to answer a big Edwin. The Druid basically doesn't have anything, unless you want to go for like an Ironbeak Owl in there, which, now that I mention it, is a beast, so that doesn't sound all too good in a Guardian Animals deck. But the important thing is that it really has to be in the late game, I think, where the Druid has any chance whatsoever. But before we jump into our next game, where again Glory will be switching over his tertiary deck, maybe he can find a little bit more luck thereafter. We are going to go to a quick break before, well, less than 2 hours into the broadcast now. We're going to go into our end of our 4th match between Glory and Ryvius. Should be very, very exciting to find out who has a chance of getting through to the semi-finals. We'll be back after this. It is Rivius versus Glory, our fourth match of the day, and sadly the loser of this match will be out of contention to go through to the semi-finals on Sunday. And with Glory 0-1 down to Rivius's Rogue, it's, I think, setting the story fairly well for how Season 2 is going to be different to Season 1. Because obviously, Season 1 of Grandmasters, the story was the dominance of Japan. There's no other way we can talk about it. With all three of the representatives getting through to the top four, Glory being the #1 point earner in the Swiss, and then going on to qualify through to the World Championship later on this year. It's a very different tone we're setting this time. It's Alutemu in last place, earning the least possible amount of points in the first 3 weeks of Swiss. Glory one game away from being knocked down and very possibly end up in Division B, as well as, of course, Possessi nowhere to be seen in Week 3. It's a different story indeed.
I would have to agree, especially with the likes of Bank Yugi being the newcomers, always already getting a win there, and both Tiz, I'm very impressed with the play we've seen so far, and of course Alan, we're big fans of him. It feels very much like the field in APAC is tighter this time, and it's not going to be off of luck that you end up in Division A. It's all about that hard work to get that preparation time in, which is so crucial because players have so few days between the weeks to get a grip with the new format.
Oh, indeed. But all of a sudden, this game going right up to 11 out of the gate here, as both players have very powerful starting hands. How they go about it, though, is really the question for both of these players.
Well, for Rivia, it's pretty clear that you want to get that questing as far out of range of removal as possible, which against most Druid decks, the 4 HP mark would be fine, but this Malygos Druid does run the swipe and can be able to remove this questing. For Glory, it has to not ramp this turn, but I think leaving up the questing is a recipe for disaster.
There's no two ways about it. You have to swipe on this turn. Anything other than that would be a massive mistake. We've seen game after game the power of it. You go for the overflow one turn later. I mean, I will say in this instance, it may not even be overflow first. It may be overgrowth into swipe clear, you know, whatever it is, then Ysera, then overflow to try and immediately populate the board with Dragon. So I think this is unequivocally the way to go.
And we could even see the swipe before the overgrowth, depending on what Glory's next draws are, because the Hanar is also somewhat threatening. Maybe much less so now that you've seen Ryvius did not pop off with secrets, and that is a much better play for this turn for Glory.
Yeah, love it again. Populate the board, overgrowth into 9 mana, Ysera, overflow. Good game plan.
It is different from what you usually see from Malygos Druid, but again, as you mentioned, the core package is still the same. You're not relying on the burst to get there, even though some situations it's more beneficial. Deadly poison?
That's definitely what I was looking at. I mean, Waxamancy gives you, I guess, like a couple of extra activations for if you find Edwin, because you can play the Waxamancy, then play a 0-mana Battlecry minion afterwards.
Yeah. I was definitely just looking at the poison so he could just play Dagger and that and Backstab to deal with his Teacher's Pet.
Right.
Pretty cleanly. Picks up a secret though, so gets a little bit of Hanar value. I'm surprised that he's willing to play Ice Barrier just to get another roll off of Hanar though.
I was looking at either of the other two options quite a bit more heavily, actually, I've got to say. Like, obviously Conjurer's Calling, there's not too many fantastic targets in the deck that you want to be hitting, but it still seemed fairly powerful. And of course, Pyroblast for later on in the game cannot be sniffed at all.
I would say the value of this secret pretty much just bluffing this turn. Of course, you get to generate another secret, but it's 0 tempo. The rogue is definitely the one that wants to be aggressive, so you're hardly getting use out of the armor later on.
Okay. A little bit skeptical about that one, but big finds and big tempo now, I'd have to imagine, coming down for Rivius with the Witchy Lackey upgrading, more minions with Waxamancy. It's maybe starting to come together at last.
Yeah, he can upgrade this mummy, so it's actually playable. My favorite play with Generous Mummy is when you rush the first half with the Goblin Lackey and then evolve the second half, if you're really, really lucky.
My dream is your nightmare.
And Glory by this point has to be wondering if that's a Vaporize or Flame Ward, because he has tested for the spell-based one. He's now tested for Mirror Entity. Honestly, if I were Glory here, Ice Barrier would be the last thing on my mind, and it would be like still not activated despite Ysera coming down.
Yeah, I mean, if it's Ice Barrier or Vaporize, to be perfectly honest, you do not care. Your only game plan here is to clear the board, get the dragons in play. That's how you win. Whoa!
Oh!
Or is this how you win? This is insane.
Yeah, how does he go about this? Because the swipe looks pretty nice here as well.
Yeah, it does.
The line I'm looking at though is the Ysera ends up trading into the Wrapped Golem, which doesn't look clean, but if you're gonna heal the Ysera up back anyway.
Right. So you go Omu, swipe that, Ysera trade into the Wrapped Golem, hero power the Wrapped Golem, and then overflow so it doesn't heal.
Right.
That makes sense to me.
And you still end up with a 4-1 on the other side of the board, but... Okay, so he's leaving up both halves of the Wrapped Golem, doesn't want to take 7. I think it's a little bit weird to me because of the evasive Draconid likely against it.
Yeah, obviously he has more mana to work with now, so he could have hit Germination, I suppose, with the Innovate that he already had in hand would be the dream. But there's actually not that much, to be perfectly honest. You know, he's used both the swipes at this point, right, in order to clear off the board. So in terms of having extra mana to work with, I do disagree with that play from Glory, and I think I would have liked using the Wrapped Golem cleared.
Blackjack Stunner could have been a disaster for Glory here.
Yeah.
Or even just this, the trade and evolve the second half.
Ooh.
Lucent Bark.
That's good for Glory. That's not the best.
But depending on what Rivius can pull from this plagiarize, maybe the Lucent Bark can come back for the... No, very unlikely. Yeah. Rivius has far too much HP. The armor actively bad for him here.
I mean, the big point as well for Glory on that turn is no dragons came down. He still has 6 portals left in the deck. It was very unfortunate not to get any at all off of the overflow. And so maybe trying to set up for another one sooner rather than later is something he should definitely start aggressively looking at.
I'm definitely considering this Geppetto as well. With the Alex and Ysera played, the pool is getting very narrow. You could be looking to snipe Malygos as the Geppetto pickup.
Right.
But Malygos, now that I think about it, has a lot less utility now that he's used both Swipe and a Moonfire.
Yeah, you burn a card, but I like this overflow. I think populating the board with dragons is the best thing you can do on average by a significant margin.
Yep, agreed.
Good explorer comes prepared.
Ooh, not the best ones.
Yikes, not if they look like that though.
So, is it just gonna be Crystal Powers to get rid of the Lucent Bark? You have to free up hand space, because you definitely don't want to overdraw the portals.
Wow.
Oh.
Going for immediate portals instead.
Oh! Okay. Free Malygos?
Oh. Go, 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 go!
Wait! Oh! He didn't have time to go for Innervate Crystal Power.
Oh, man. It's tough, because he was anticipating the turn would end there, but this, again, this is the bane of Glory. Good play almost consistently across the board, you and I feel like. But roping out there in the end, it's not been the cleanest game so far from Glory.
Makes a huge difference because now his hand is full, he can overdraw dragons, and also he did not remove this Lucent Bark. Glory getting down the overflow of his own, looking for, there you go, that's the money, the stunners, both of them.
Okay, no Edwin to speak of quite yet, which does hurt a little bit on this turn. But the important thing is, as you said, dealing with these dragons, not even sapping them, just straight up killing them, and significantly ahead on board when both Omu and both the swipes have been used. Glory's clear potential is drastically limited now.
My hand is too full.
And yet, Rivius is not presenting very much threat on board either. Because there were no questings and Edwins, which of course Rivius had no control over, it kind of feels like now it's just gonna be an old-fashioned slugfest for board control, where Glory has more individual minions, but slower ways to remove the ambush. The one of that Rivius is in the primary that his practice partners are not running is huge here as well.
It's going to start ramping up, though, for sure here for Ryvius. He can start drawing with the Breath of Dreams in order to find the second questing and the Edwin, which would be pretty huge here. Also, just finding a Secret Passage would be huge. Like, he has a lot of good draws from this point on to really start ratcheting up the pressure.
I really like the idea of just Alakir and Dirty Tricks, though. So you take the draw from the Dirty Tricks, and you just put down a 3-5 Winry Rush Divine Shield. How is Druid going to deal with that?
Whoa! Those are powerful. Not active quite yet is Dragon Queen Alexstrasza, but you know what? We'll take it.
Okay, and in terms of just presenting more damage on board, sure, the Winged Guardian also presents the 6 that Alakir does, and the immediate attack from Alakir can come down at any point anyway. I'm pretty desperate for Glory to take just the one beast, but nothing else gave him efficient enough ways to deal with the board.
Okay, dragons, dragons, dragons. Something big to try and wrestle him back.
Barely has any cards left. And the other Twilight Runner, if it attacks, will start overdrawing him.
Oh! Squall Hunter is massive, however. An extra 2 spell damage with these crystal powers.
Yup.
That's just a clear on the Lucent box should he need it.
But Glory is dying.
He is just dying. That is true.
If I'm Glory, my first game plan that I would like to set up here is find some time to play Alex and then go for stuff with them. Malygos doesn't even get anything done anymore with all the Moonfires used. I just don't see a game plan anymore.
Okay, Germination. That's more big threats.
Yeah, the taunt on this is huge. He's seen both of the stunners, so he can just ward-based approach now. And even though he's overloaded, he's kept this Innervate, so he can go Vate Alexstrasza for a blindside lethal if necessary.
And this turn from Rivius, I mean, I need like 10 hours, I think, to properly figure out this turn and what you're supposed to do. But Rivius has got to get going because there are going to be a lot of actions happening here if he wants to be able to take the win. Shadow Step. Shadow Step on the stunner doesn't work. There's no secret, so Polly can take out the taunt. Okay, good start.
Yeah, I think he might step the One Thief here. I think Rivius was going for card draw to get this One Thief, knowing that both of the stunners are down, or get another secret to use with the stunners.
Yeah.
Stepping stunner.
Doesn't have a secret in play. He just forgot.
What?
He forgot.
Oh my gosh!
Straight up.
Oh no!
Disaster!
Huge disaster! Now how is he gonna deal with the other 8/8s? I thought he was gonna step the
Get yourself
One Thief
together!
to find freeze, but he has to finish his turn. None at all.
Go! He doesn't have mana for Edwin. The secret that he might be able to get is useless now, of course, now that he's played the stunner.
It's just dagger now. Or something.
This was an absolute disaster. Innervate Alexstrasza. It's only the armor that's keeping Rivius alive. Oh wait, the Neophyte means he can't do that anyway.
Yeah, but still uncharacteristically sloppy from Rivia.
I mean, I would say from both players this game, like this Lucent box shouldn't even be in play most of the time because the Wrapped Golem should have been killed in the first place. But I'm trying to move on from that. The Cult Neophyte, in a way, working well for Glory here because it adds an extra +1/+1 onto the Ghidra.
And Glory can just play clean up here, send that Nazari to the face, set up for lethal with Alexstrasza in the next turn. Rivius is out of answers, but he can put this Alakir in the way?
Right, so 2 fatigue plus the 2 on board means 12 damage is what Rivius needs to find from hand. It's never finding it.
He's just fishing now for
Murzont?
so he can get Gidra, and if it's in the right order, get the Overgrowth.
Well, it doesn't cast it, right? He didn't
Yeah, it
play
doesn't.
this spell. It's...
Yeah.
I don't even know what to say at the end there. A crazy way to end that game. And I've got to be honest, I did not see Glory even coming close to taking a win in that game. It was a miserable ending, an uncharacteristic ending, as you so eloquently put it, from Ryvius. But whether or not it's the kind of thing he would usually do, he did do it in this instance. And it's game over because of that for Ryvius. One apiece now, all coming to this final game.
It is painful to watch it end that way, although dialing it back a bit, I guess it was an exaggeration for me to say that I couldn't see a win condition for Glory. He was very, very much going hard for board instead there, which made a lot of sense because he was out of the burst spell actually pair with Malygos. And even though it was sloppy to not have rope or to have roped out there instead of going for the Innervate and Crystal Power to end the turn, I think Glory's macro game plan made a lot of sense. And because of that, Ryvius, his actual only out there was to step the One Thief and look for freeze. Just blanked out and couldn't, I guess, recognize that there were no secrets on board. The point I was just trying to make, though, is that it still had to be lucky for Ryvius, even if he stepped the One Thief.
Yeah, and I really agree with your point there about the macro game plan from Glory, because it wasn't only the end game where he was aggressively fighting for board, completely dismantling the Malygos combo because he realized he didn't need it. It was also the early game that I thought was very spot on from him. The swipe, as we talked about, a necessary play, but then holding back on the overgrowth for the necessary turn to get the curve of Ysera into overflow. I think even in the unlucky situation that he got where he drew none of the dream portals off of the overflow itself, I think it was still very much the correct way to go about it, to try and populate the board and push the rogue out of the game with all those dragons. And even if it only worked because of a mistake there in the end for Ryvius, that's what you play for. A lot of the time in Hearthstone, it's very rarely a perfect game from both sides. And Glory coming out, I think, all things considered, the well-deserved victor as we head into our, for Glory, our second game 3 of the day.
Yes, it is indeed. And he has the ramp in the opener once again. Is there a consideration just keeping the Twilight Runner as guaranteed card draw by the time you hit turn 4?
It doesn't really synergize with Lightning Bloom all too well, right? Because your game plan would be Wild Growth into Twilight Runner, and the Lightning Bloom doesn't factor into that. And so I think you're either keeping either the right card or the left card with Wild Growth there. One or the other, because they kind of work to two different game plans. And I'm okay here with Glory, just going for the Lightning Bloom to try and cheat out either Guardian Animals, Overflow, Alexstrasza, Malygos, Ysera. There's a big list of cards that you'll have to cheat out.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Drew... Oh my gosh! Oh! Off the top! Dragon for the ramp. Ryvius hates to see it. But to finish my point, yeah, I think Druid needs to be going for more impact. You can't just be settling for Twilight Runner a little bit early, because you expect your opponent to come out with the questings with the Edwins. And Ryvius, however, is visibly extremely stressed out from that last game. It's hard to get back in a good mindset.
I mean, there's risky plays that can be made already at this point in the game. We're looking at coin prep, passage, hope for an Edwin. It's already something he can consider. I don't think he's that far behind. I don't think he needs to take that big risk. But those kind of plays are rapidly becoming available.
Yeah, maybe in the near future. He did manage to pick up a good legendary somewhat for the curve at least.
Very good.
Doesn't line up great against Teacher's Pet though. I mean, you can just ignore it and push everything face. But I think that from Rogue, what we've seen time and time again is that you need an insurmountable board presence rather than burst early on to beat Druid. So,
well, I was talking about needing to find an Edwin last turn. Ryvius clearly is saying, if I find the Edwin here, you can just pack up right now and leave this game. But it has to come off the 5 cards from this secret passage, and Glory is praying that it isn't there.
And it's a terrible outcome from Ryvius. Not just Edwin is hugely impactful there, but also even Blackjack Stunner you would be happy to see as Ryvius, but big whiff.
Glory couldn't even look until after the fact there to see whether or not it was an Edwin. I guess he didn't hear the Brotherhood shall prevail, or whatever the equivalent is in Japanese, and thus was vindicated in his prayers.
Did get double neophyted, so he can't go for the overflow this turn, but definitely not the end of the world. He can dismantle the vast majority of this board with a single swipe. Or if he wants crystal power. I'm seeing Crystal Power, Moonfire, Hero Power as looking clean because it spends all your mana, but because of Neophyte, it's actually very inefficient to do that.
Yeah. It was really just whether or not we want to go with the swipe to clear up a little bit of extra damage from your board. But I can respect holding on to it here.
Yeah, in the end, using no spells at all because he doesn't deem this board threatening enough to proc 36 tricks or plagiarize from Rivius' side.
Well, he needs some kind of a high-value spell here, be it... I was going to say Arcane Intellect in the Dream, but Conjurer's Calling is not terrible, especially if the Cane can stick for another turn.
Yeah, I think it's his only real option here. The others are just far too unimpactful. As for Glory, can just get this Ysera down and go for Crystal Power. But he has to be aware of Plagiarize. He is giving this some half combo of
True.
Lightning Bloom Ysera over to Rivius. Won't be playable next turn yet, but turn after.
Yep, not a bad point at all. But I mean, the really big thing is just actually, I think, how Lightning Bloom can synergize with Questing or Edwin, right? For Rivius, especially as he's drawn an extra couple of cards here. He's definitely going to start pushing heavily onto the board now.
What to do?
So, Glory, now that he's played a minion, knows that the other secret is not ambush, so he's thinking, can I afford to give Rivius a Crystal Power? I think it's doing less for Rivius, at least on the board state, than it's for Glory. But again, that's another cheap spell that can pair with Edwin, with Questing. So we do see Glory hold on to it.
Give me a quest.
Okay, we're lifting off now finally here for Rivius.
Yep, Lightning Bloom right now can get another secret on board. I think it's absolutely worth it to buff the Questing. Like, Rivius is not the Ysera. I mean, he doesn't run the card draw to justify holding off on this to play Ysera next turn.
Oh,
Ooh.
that is a card though. Outside of that, we were looking at like Swipe, Crystal Power, Clear, which again likely gives your opponents more cards off of Plagiarize. But here instead, Guardian Animals, double Twilight Runner. This is insane.
Start pulling out the dragons as well. Here's one. Yeah, take a bite of that cane. Or I guess he can trade Ysera into it.
No dragons though. He's not getting lucky with these portal pools. It's got to be said.
I think you're happy with this if you're Glory.
You're
Pretty
not
much
too
the
upset.
entire board swept up from the other side, and he has these overflows to follow up if he still doesn't hit enough dragons next turn.
So again, Questing can come down, but I think it's fair to say while the Druid doesn't often feel too much of an impact from the overload of Lightning Bloom, the Rogue definitely does here.
Yep. Yeah, I think Rivius did just have to take this time to clear up the board, maintain some meager presence while delaying Glory. Huge though that he picks up Portal. Oh!
So here this could be Crystal Power, Innovate, Ghidra,
Overflow.
Overflow?
Yes, I like the
That
sound of
sounds
that.
absolutely broken. The only thing you have to be afraid of is, of course, the ambush, which you know it is at this point.
Right. So the order doesn't work out that well there because you would
yeah.
want to potentially Crystal Power Moonfire, but then he can just go for the swipe line and still get a decent sized Gidra.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. That's fine. What?
So in the end, he's still just going for overflow
Right.
here. So
He's just
valuing
accepting.
a card draw. Yeah. And then the Gidra's still big enough to clear the other two. I like this.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. It looks really weird, and in my head I'm like, there must be something better that you can do here on this turn, but good enough, I think, is definitely the answer here.
And with the rope burning there, it's pretty tough to
Yikes!
knock Glory on that, because he did rope out last game.
True.
But that is indeed a huge yikes for Rivius's hand. I mean, he knows that it's not coming together. And this is all off of the back of the what-ifs that he must have been asking from last game.
Yeah, this is an instance that I've come up across a lot playing with a very salty Dutch practice group, where the phrase "Waar is mijn draak" seems to come up a lot. I think meaning "Where is my dragon?" with a couple of other expletives thrown in there as
Give
well.
me a quest.
Dutch sounds like English.
Yeah, it does. It literally does.
My hand is too full.
Ah, there it is.
In
Okay.
time, you too will bloom.
Ah,
In time,
the
Yeah.
beautiful
This is where
combo.
things happen. All of a sudden, things going very wrong. Malygos found, swipe ready to go alongside with it. All the mana you could possibly want in the world. And I think that is just going to be lights out here for Rivius. He's got 8 damage on the board, plus the extra that you need. Is that like exactly cool? Very, very close to it for Glory. And in the end, despite losing to a rogue at the start, very nearly going down 0-2 to Rivius, he manages to claw back the reverse sweep and stay in with some contention of going through to the semi-finals on Sunday. What a crazy series across the board.
Incredibly impressive ending there from Glory. And I have to say, I did very much enjoy these, even though it had its bumps. I think it's fine to see that in Hearthstone every now and then and realize that these players are very much human, despite them being Grandmasters. Things can go wrong. That's why you practice every single week. Rivius, I'm sure he's not going to be forgetting that slip up anytime soon, but I do hope that he put it behind him as we move into round robin next week.
Yeah, I think considering what I expect from both of these players at this point, I was a little disappointed. It wasn't a terrible series overall, but I think these two players are just absolutely two of the best that we have here in APAC that can consistently show some of the most creative deck building from Rivius and from Glory, to some of the most consistent play with his very strong performance last season. But it matters not for Glory in the end. He came away the victor, and he's going to be lining up with a slightly different challenge in his decider match here. He's faced 2 rogues today, 1 win, 1 loss up against Chonsu and Rivius. But now he's got a matchup that we're going to get into a little bit more after the break. But up against Tom Zhu, I have to imagine Glory is going to be more than a little bit scared. So while he tries to calm himself down during the break, we will be right back with our final match of the day here for APAC in a very, very fast fashion. Glory up against Tom will be our final match here of the day for APAC right after.